Hey guys, what's up? It's Law coming back to ya with another episode of Car Rides with Law. And today, I actually think I got very good sleep. It didn't give me a good score, and I'm not really sure as to why. It could have been possibly because I woke up too early, or not too early, but I'm assuming it scores consistency, which I did not. I assume I went to bed, but I actually don't know why. I think it treats like wake ups as not good. I did have two wake ups in the middle of the night, but they were not too bad. Two wake ups, but I went back to sleep relatively quickly. So I wouldn't really consider them to be crazy in terms of hurting my sleep. And then in terms of the time, I actually got 7 hours and 45 minutes. And coinciding well with my theory, I got just like a monster load of REM sleep, which my theory was, and I'm pretty sure it's just fact that if you're waking up too early, you're not going to get enough REM. Or if you're, not sleeping enough, I guess. If your duration is low, then you won't get REM. That's my theory. But that being said, if you get to bed too late and it's then you would get a double whammy, but then you'd lose your deep and your REM. But anyways, I actually got again, like I said, 7 hours and 45 minutes of sleep. I think that is great. I don't really think there's too much else to mention there. It's great. And yeah, there's not too much else to mention. So silent show now. I I guess after yesterday, believe it or not, I'm waking up and I'm feeling similarly. A lot of times before bed, I'll be motivated, I'll be scheming and planning. And then the next day hits. And I kind of forget about everything. Kind of forget about everything. I rewind further past than where I was. But I still remember what my intentions were. It's to attempt to speak with more precision with my words. As really that, I feel like that as a skill is what's more striking than volume. While I could talk a lot anytime, I don't really think that skill needs any practice. And I also think that there's actually a good amount of people who can speak at great length and volume and quantity of words. I don't know that they really can as well as me or as much as me, but I don't see that as a strikeout. Like people would go, wow, this guy's really special. I don't. I don't know that people would get that reaction, but even if they would, I'm more interested in them. I'm more interested in simultaneously being able to cultivate the quality of my voice and speaking, and it be like a light, and it be a light switch, and it would be like a light switch. One switch is flipped, and you get quality, more meticulous calculation, and then if the switch gets flipped to the other way, it would be more volume, quantity, punch, strike. In a way, I've cultivated both during this show. I wouldn't say that there hasn't been moments that have been slower and more calculated, although the conquest is quite difficult. I tend to notice when I'm talking to an actual person that my words and my voice tends to be more calculated. I'm going to assume that's where most of the progress has been made for this style of talking. It almost feels robotic in a sense because you're speaking in a way that is supposed to be perfect. And I wonder about things because the filler words, they add a sense of personality or character to the speaking. While they aren't inherently optimal, there are certain phrasings or filler words that I would use that are probably fairly unique to myself. So you kind of get into that argument of, well, on one hand, you got a little more character, but a little less polish. And then on the other hand, what if people don't really like that I sound perfect and robotic? So that's why I conclude that it's about having the switch and having the capability in practice. Because you want to be able to speak in both ways depending on what the topic pertains to. You don't want to necessarily dull out either. I think there's been moments on the show where I've been able to speak fast and hit hard and strike hard, strong. It's intense. But I'd like to be able to also be able to speak very meticulously, very optimized, and ideally without flaw, and be able to control and balance those two energies. I think it's a worthwhile ambition, but as I have already stated repeatedly, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna end up quitting, as I do with most things, as I did at the start of this show, which, believe it or not, we're getting on like 8 or 9 months ago at this rate. Which, in and of itself, is incredibly strange to think about. It's incredibly strange for me to think about how it's been that long. I think the REM sleep is really important, though. I'd like to try to prioritize it. Now, in this case, I don't think I really did anything in particular. It just happened. So that's part of the problem. It's difficult to control something like sleep. You can do a lot and adjust a lot of variables, but ultimately you sleep and it's that's the whole point is it's not really something that you're not in control, you're out of control. I think that's why it's difficult for a lot of people nowadays. No, this is off topic, but just as a side input, I did get out of the house sort of late today, so I will end up getting to work a little bit later, but it's kind of okay because I realized that during this week I actually overshot it a lot on Monday, so in terms of how late I stayed, so I actually shouldn't even I don't really need to be getting there early anyway, so it's kind of chill. Tomorrow that won't be the case though. Tomorrow I'm definitely going to want to be in here sharp, bright and early. But for today it's all right. It's not a problem. I guess what I'm thinking about is I'm trying to think how there's a certain way to write, and I don't think that my speaking or other people's speaking necessarily reflects that. Although I could be a bigger culprit of this issue. I think with the way that I speak and just how words are packed and crammed into things, there's definitely the same grammar and the same everything that applies to, you know, that you would writing as you would speaking. And like, even just there with the that I put in and the like I just put in, they're not things that you would type out in an essay. You just wouldn't do that. So that's kind of my, I guess, theory is it would be like in your speech, just being able to speak in a way as if you were typing an essay. I think it would be relatively impressive. I don't know if everybody's able to do that, though. It's more difficult because you don't have the paper right in front of you, so you can't actually see things to correct them. It's happening sort of in your mind, but it's kind of difficult for us to multitask, which is why I think most of it is habit building. Most of it becomes speech patterns. But I'd assume if I started paying attention to it, if I started listening to people and placing their words on a written piece of paper and physically looking at them, I have a hunch that there would be a lot of people, myself included, with pretty dramatic I was going to say grammacular, but I don't think that's really a word. Grammatical. I think it's grammatical. Grammatical errors, things that wouldn't make sense in an essay format. And I do believe that I could be a pretty big culprit of this, if I'm going to be honest. I think a lot of my speaking, it has a lot of those extra filler words layered into it. So it just becomes an onslaught of words, which is interesting, but it's not very precise. And I think for a lot of people, it's just worse because it's just more difficult for a person to comprehend. For a lot of people, words are not something they love necessarily. For me, I love words. I love language. So if a person has extra words layered in there, it doesn't really faze me. To me, to anybody, from my perception, from anybody who I've talked to, it's like every extra word you use is just an extra word that they're like every extra word you use, they're just more likely to completely dismiss you and get tired of what you're saying. People don't really appreciate a long explanation, even if it's thorough, even if it's necessary. I've known a lot of people that get annoyed about just when I talk a lot. And so that's the thing, is this show's been an outlet for me to talk in that way. But I don't know if that is necessarily a good thing, because I'd almost appreciate the pressure of another person to try to steer me in the correct direction, if that is in fact the correct direction. And I mean, I don't really know as of now. I feel like if I put it into GPT, it might be able to give me its 2 cents about it. But for the time being, it's nothing more than an assumption. An assumption about the nature of speaking. I completely lost track of what I was talking about, so I just was trying to put some pizzazz there. Some verbose spice, if you will. I wasn't I wasn't really talking about anything. I noticed that with people though. A lot of people, they really they're rigid when it comes to speech. They're rigid. Sorry, I started thinking. It's gonna happen. I don't know how much pressure I really feel, because ultimately this is something I just do on my time for myself. I think that's really the correct way of putting it. The vision I have for it is not really here yet. It's just not. The vision of a more interactive system, it's just not. I mean, people, y'all are going to show up when y'all show up, but I think for the time being, it really should just be seen as something I'm kind of doing and posting for myself. It's not. I don't even know that I intend people will watch all these episodes, or that all these episodes are even all that good. There's a lot of things I could say about that. And I think for the time being, I really should just focus on, this is a thing I do. I'm uploading it because why not? But that's not really, I'm not trying to create some polished show. And as I said before, the pausing, it's okay. I mean, this, at the end of the day, this is my commute to work, to and from, and I think I'm allowed to have my breaks to think. I think the main issue that I come into understanding about talking with calculation is the flow kind of gets jammed up. And when you're trying to think about avoiding fillers and making sure that each word is meticulously chosen, you end up missing a lot of. You just end up missing a lot. And it takes a lot of the flow and a lot of the character out of the speaking. But I assume these are things that would change as time goes on. Mostly, as I explained, I would assume that most people's speaking and speech patterns are very habitual. They happen without much thought or calculation. So it's likely that it's just rough for the duration that you are trying to change your autopilot settings. It's very difficult to get in there and have a meaningful change. It takes a while, it takes a lot of effort to change those autopilot settings. It's not easy. That's why I think nobody would ever bother under normal circumstances, but for me, I don't really have that luxury. I mean, I tried to think about that and pull that off for a while, but that ultimately, that whole not optimizing thing is not, it's not going to fly. Because this is just kind of what I have to do. Like, I can't continue to go on in this way. Just being lazy, not actually putting in effort. Because really, at a certain point, I guess there's not as much growth in the show, or there could be diminishing returns. I don't think I should act like there are eyes on me right now. I think I should just be acting as this is a test chamber. It's kind of a shame, though. I mean, still in a way, it's a little bit disappointing to me. I think it always will be, but just trying to move away from that. It's disappointing because it's still this episode. I don't really think we talked about anything too deep or crazy. It was just a lot of refinement and talking about talking, which is fine for me, but I always feel like I have the need to push the envelope, and I usually don't do that. I guess that's important, though, is to really look at this as a test chamber. This whole time I've been trying to keep it higher stakes than that, but I just don't think that's what it is. I was just thinking about something that happened to me a while back, and my mind took over my thoughts, so I wasn't able to speak. I wonder if the same discipline could be applied to my mind as I'm trying to apply to my mouth. Because they sort of go hand in hand. I often feel, or I'm thinking of in this moment, that the chatter that I present is a result of what's in my mind. So if my mind is very quantity and voluminous with thoughts, lacking much control or structure, then when I go to talk, it's going to end up being the same way. And that's how I feel, at least, that my mind has been for a while now. It's been busy, it's been noisy. And I'm just going to assume that the mouth and what comes out of it is a reflection of the mind that the mouth resides in. Since presumably what comes out of the mouth originates from the mind of the flesh which the mouth resides. Sorry, I was just thinking about, because I saw a new, I believe, Nissan Murano. So I was just thinking about the whole bankruptcy thing, that I don't know if it ever got solved, because I kind of kept, like, I didn't really see much more about it, and then I haven't actually pursued it all that much in my own on my own time. And I was just thinking about how Honda was originally interested in purchasing it, but that they would have just used their own platforms and then probably styled them differently to be like Nissan. And then I was thinking about how I guess we're just getting to a point where, you know, a lot of these extra car brands have just faded, the ones that don't really serve a purpose. I guess Nissan's purpose was Japanese optimization for cost, as opposed to the typical optimization for just like a all around good car. Nissan would make themselves to be like a very cheap car. That's typically, I mean, my take about it. I think their parts are the cheapest. I think everything about them is just very like affordable. Whereas Honda or Toyota, a little more expensive, but a little better quality. And I guess that's just a lane that it doesn't really make that much sense anymore. You know, we're getting to a point in society where the stakes are higher and I have to go. So hopefully we can talk about that later if I even remember, but I probably won't, but we'll see. Anyways, it's been Schla, now it's time to buy Schla. So, see you Schla.